Former Beatle John Lennon, who was 40, was shot and killed last night outside his luxury apartment in New York. The alleged killer is an unemployed security guard.
At 73, former trauma surgeon Doctor David Halleran is finally opening up about the tragic night that shocked the world. The murder of John Lennon. For over 4 decades, he carried the weight of a moment etched in history. The night he fought to save the life of a legend. What really happened inside Roosevelt Hospital that night? And why is Dr. Halleran choosing now to break his silence? Let's find out why, finally, at 73, former doctor finally breaks silence on John Lennon and his awful tragic ending. John Lennon, the enigmatic Beatle and the surgeon who tried to save him. John Lennon, the iconic co-founder of the Beatles, was more than just a musician. He was a cultural revolutionary whose life and untimely death continue to captivate the world. Known for his distinctive style, sharp wit, and profound lyrics, Lennon embodied the spirit of the 1960s. 60s counterculture. His commitment to peace and his complex personality made him a symbol of hope and controversy alike. Over 4 decades ago, the world was shaken by the news of Lennon's incident outside his residence at the Dakota in New York City. Before he took his last breath, Lennon was rushed to Roosevelt Hospital. Dr. David Halleran, a third-year general surgery resident at the time, was among the medical team that attempted to save him. Unaware of the patient's identity, Halleran performed a thoracotomy and manually massaged Lennon's heart in a desperate bid to revive him. It wasn't until a nurse remarked on the patient's resemblance to Lennon and his wallet was checked that the team realized who they were treating. Despite their efforts, Lennon succumbed to his injuries, having lost over 80% of his blood volume due to his wounds. In the years following the tragedy, Dr. Halleran remained silent about that night. However, decades later, he shared his experience, expressing the emotional toll it took on him. He recalled the eerie moment when, after pronouncing Lennon dead, the hospital's Muzak system played Imagine, adding a haunting note to an already somber evening. Lennon's death has been the subject of numerous conspiracy theories, with some suggesting CIA involvement due to his political activism. While these theories remain unproven, they contribute to the enduring mysteries surrounding his assassination. Dr. Halleran's account provides a poignant glimpse into the frantic efforts to save a man who had already given so much to the world. But what really is the story behind John Lennon's untimely death? Let's delve into the details. The eerie story behind John Lennon's death. On the evening of December 8, 1980, John Lennon was shot and fatally wounded in the archway of the Dakota, his residence in New York City. Mark David Chapman was an American Beatles fan who was envious and enraged by Lennon's lifestyle alongside his 1966 comment that the Beatles were more popular than Jesus. Chapman claimed to have been inspired by the fictional character Holden Caulfield from J.D. Salinger's novel The Catcher in the Rye, a phony life-taker who loathes hypocrisy. In this case, Lennon was the phony, and Chapman was the one to end the phony's life. Mark Chapman had been planning his sinister act for months, waiting patiently for the perfect moment to strike. That morning, he waited outside the Dakota, John Lennon's New York City apartment building, armed with a .38 special revolver and a copy of Lennon's latest album, Double Fantasy. And as fate would have it, Lennon emerged from the building that evening, signing Chapman's album before heading to a recording session. Later that night, Lennon and his wife, Yoko Ono, returned to the Dakota to bid their son good night before a spontaneous date night. It was then that Chapman made his move, firing 5 hollow-point bullets at Lennon as he approached the entrance. 4 of the bullets hit their mark, striking Lennon in the back. Lennon was rushed to Roosevelt Hospital in a police car, but it was too late. The damage that was done by the bullets and the amount of blood he lost proved to be too much to be fixed. He was pronounced dead on arrival a few minutes past 11 p.m., his life cut short at just 40 years old. The most troubling part of this story was that the person who took John Lennon's life, Chapman, remained at the scene, calmly reading The Catcher in the Rye until police arrived to arrest him. The news of Lennon's incident sent shockwaves around the globe, sparking an outpouring of grief from fans and fellow musicians alike. Crowds gathered outside Roosevelt Hospital and the Dakota, mourning the loss of a musical legend. In the days that followed, Lennon was cremated at Ferncliff Cemetery, and Yoko Ono requested a worldwide moment of silence in lieu of a funeral. Chapman, meanwhile, pleaded guilty to the crime and was sentenced to 20 years to life imprisonment, despite being eligible for parole. Since the year 2000, he has been denied release 13 times. Chapman is still in prison today and has had over 10 requests for parole refused since he became eligible. At this time, Correctional Association of New York lawyer Robert Gangi said that he thought it unlikely that Chapman would ever be freed because the board would not risk the political heat of releasing the one who ended John Lennon's life. Ono has also stated that if Chapman were released, she and Lennon's sons would not feel safe for the rest of their lives. I am afraid it will bring back the nightmare, the chaos and confusion. Once again, she added in an open letter, there's been different sides to this story ever, since it happened as conspiracy theories continue to roll out. So, what has been put out there that's fascinated the public? Let's find out. A weird trial for an high-profile case. The world reacted in horror when news broke that Beatles legend John Lennon had been shot, dead outside his own apartment block. The tragic act hasn't moved far from the headlines ever since. One thing was pointed out that would leave you truly wondering. John Lennon's outspoken left-wing activism had caught the attention of the Central Intelligence Agency and Federal Bureau of Investigation, who kept a watchful eye on him. The circumstances surrounding his death and the subsequent actions of Mark Chapman, the perpetrator, have fueled conspiracy theories suggesting CIA involvement. In his 1990 book, Who Killed John Lennon?, Fenton Bressler, whether Chapman was brainwashed by the CIA to carry out the assassination, drawing parallels with the classic thriller The Manchurian Candidate. This theory was further explored in Ian Carroll's play One Bad Thing, which suggested that Chapman was manipulated by a rogue faction within the CIA who saw Lennon as a threat. Other theorists have pointed to alleged inconsistencies in the forensic evidence, with Salvador Astrucia arguing in his 2004 book, Rethinking John Lennon's Assassination, The Readers, FBI's War on Rock Stars, that Chapman may not have acted alone. The 2010 documentary, The Day John Lennon Died, raised further questions, hinting that Jose Perdomo, the Dakota's doorman, may have had ties to the CIA and the Bay of Pigs invasion. While these theories continue to swirl, one thing is certain: John Lennon's tragic death remains a source of fascination and speculation, with many questions still unanswered. In a recent investigation, the most bizarre and shocking revelation has come to the forefront. It has come to light that two different guns may have been used in the John Lennon shooting, according to a British writer investigating the case. Author and TV producer David Halleran has unearthed official records showing for the first time that two different types of bullets were removed from the music legend's body. Halleran believes a second shooter could have been involved in the death of Lennon and has now uncovered dramatic new evidence supporting his case. Mail Online reported how Halleran already discovered a trove of fascinating documents relating to the incident, which took place as Lennon and his wife Yoko Ono returned to their home in the Dakota building overlooking New York Central Park. Halleran's 3-year investigation into the killing has highlighted a series of extraordinary inconsistencies, including the suggestion that detectives may have fundamentally misunderstood how the shooting happened. This source also exclusively revealed some of Halleran's dossier, including convicted gunman Mark Chapman's hit list, published for the first time, which, as well as the former Beatle, also featured Marlon Brando and former First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. Now, Halleran's research has focused on the bullets recovered from the scene. Oddly, only 2 slugs were ever entered into evidence, according to the documents, despite the fact that Chapman was said to have fired all the rounds in his 5-chamber .38 special revolver, 4 of them hitting Lennon. Whether or not it was done by Chapman or anyone else, one thing that's certain is that the world was left reeling with Lennon's death. While Lennon's life and death has been shrouded in mystery ever since he drew his last breath, his achievements and life has fascinated the public as well. So, where did this journey start from? Let's delve into that. John Lennon, the beginning. The journey all began in the year 1940, when John Winston Lennon was born on October 9th in Liverpool, Merseyside, England, during a German air raid in the heart of World War II. It was a dark and chaotic day, yet it marked the arrival of someone who would one day shake the world with his words, his music, and his message of peace. From the beginning, Lennon's life was shaped by turbulence. At just 4 years old, his parents separated. His father, Alfred, a merchant seaman, was often away at sea and largely absent from his life. Young John Lennon ended up in the care of his Aunt Mimi and Uncle George at Mendips, a modest home in the Woolton suburb of Liverpool. Although stern and proper, Aunt Mimi provided stability. Lennon's mother, Julia, though no longer his primary caregiver, remained a spirited and musical presence. She would visit frequently, teaching him how to play the banjo and piano, and even buying him his first guitar. That gift would spark the beginning of one of the most influential musical journeys of all time. But just as his life began to brighten, tragedy struck. In July 1958, Julia was fatally hit by a car driven by an off-duty police officer. Lennon was only 17. Her death shattered him and haunted much of his later work. Songs like Julia and Mother speak to the deep psychological scars left by her loss. In school, Lennon was a class clown with a rebellious streak. He was known for his sharp tongue, biting humor, and for drawing grotesque caricatures and surreal images. His academic performance was poor, but his art teacher recognized a spark and encouraged him to pursue art. School Lennon eventually attended the Liverpool College of Art, where his creative instincts flourished, but music, not visual art, would become his true calling. In 1957, Lennon formed his first band, the Quarrymen, a skiffle group that would evolve into the Beatles after he met a young Paul McCartney. The beginning of something magical. Many legendary figures have drawn inspiration from someone or somewhere, so it was Elvis. Presley's explosion onto the rock music scene that inspired a 16-year-old Lennon to create. The skiffle band called the Quarrymen, named after his school. Lennon met Paul McCartney at a church fete on July 6, 1957. He soon invited McCartney to join the group, and the two eventually formed one of the most successful songwriting partnerships in musical history. McCartney introduced George Harrison to Lennon the following year, and Harrison and Art, college buddy Stuart Sutcliffe, also joined Lennon's band. Always in need of a drummer, the group finally settled on Pete Best in 1960. The first recording they made was Buddy Holly's That'll Be the Day in 1958. In fact, it was Holly's group, the Crickets, that inspired the band to change its name. Lennon would later joke that he had a vision when he was 12 years old, that a man appeared on a flaming pie and said unto them, "From this day on, you are Beatles with an A." From there, the story began. The Beatles were discovered by Brian Epstein in 1961 at Liverpool's Cavern Club, where they were performing on a regular basis. As their new manager, Epstein secured a record contract with EMI. With a new drummer, Ringo Starr, and George Martin as a producer, the group released their first single, Love Me Do, in October 1962. It peaked on the British charts at number 17. Lennon wrote the group's follow-up single, Please Please Me, inspired primarily by Roy Orbison, but also fed by Lennon's infatuation with the pun in Bing Crosby's famous lyrics, "Oh, please, lend your little ears to my pleas," from the song Please. The Beatles' Please Pleased Me topped the charts in Britain. The Beatles went on to become the most popular band in Britain with the release of such mega hits as She Loves You and I Want to Hold Your Hand. In 1964, the Beatles became the first British band to break out big in the United States, beginning with their appearance on television's The Ed Sullivan Show on February 9, 1964. Beatlemania launched a British invasion of rock bands in the United States. That also included the Rolling Stones and the Kinks. Following their appearance on Sullivan, the Beatles returned to Britain to film their first film, A Hard Day's Night. The Beatles' second film, Help, was released in 1965. That June, Queen Elizabeth II announced that the Beatles would be named a member of the Order of the British Empire. In August 1965, the foursome performed to over 55,000 fans at New York's Shea Stadium, setting a new record for largest concert audience in musical history. When the Beatles returned to England, they recorded the breakthrough album, Rubber Soul, noted for extending beyond the love songs and pop formulas for which the band was previously well known. But like everything with a beginning, the magic of Beatlemania had begun to lose its appeal by 1966. The band members' lives were put in danger when they were accused of snubbing the presidential family in the Philippines. Then, Lennon's remark that the band was more popular than Jesus now incited denunciations and Beatles record bonfires in the United States Bible Belt. After an extended break, the band returned to the studio to expand their experimental sound. With substance-influenced exotic instrumentation, lyrics, and tape abstractions. The first sample was the single Penny Lane, Strawberry Fields Forever, followed by the album Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band in 1967, considered by many to be the greatest rock project in musical history. When it looked as though the band was getting things back on track, something happened that caused irreparable damage: the devastating Beatles breakup. The Beatles suffered a huge blow when Epstein died of an accidental overdose of sleeping pills on August 27, 1967. Shaken by Epstein's death, the Beatles, retrenched under McCartney's leadership in the fall and filmed Magical Mystery Tour. While the film was panned by critics, the soundtrack album contained Lennon's "I Am the Walrus," the group's most cryptic work yet. Magical Mystery Tour failed to achieve much commercial success, and the Beatles retreated into transcendental meditation and the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, which took them to India for 2 months. Their next effort, Apple Corps Limited, was plagued by mismanagement. That July, the group faced its last notably hysterical crowd at the premiere of their film Yellow Submarine. In November 1968, the Beatles' double album The Beatles, also known as the White Album, displayed their divergent directions. By this time, Lennon's artist partnership with second wife Ono had begun to cause serious tensions within the group. Lennon and Ono invented a form of peace protest by staying in bed while being filmed and interviewed, and their single Give Peace a Chance in 1960. 9, recorded under the name The Plastic Ono Band, became a national anthem of sorts for pacifists. Lennon left the Beatles in September 1969, just after the group completed recording Abbey Road. The news of the breakup was kept secret until McCartney announced his departure a year later, a month before the band released Let It Be. Not long after the Beatles broke up, Lennon released his debut solo album, John Lennon and Plastic Ono Band, featuring a raw, minimalist sound that followed primal scream therapy. He followed that project with 1971's Imagine, the most commercially successful and critically acclaimed of all Lennon's post-Beatles efforts. Peace and Love, however, was not always on Lennon's agenda. Imagine also included the track How Do You Sleep?, a vehement response to veiled messages at Lennon in some of McCartney's solo recordings. The Friends and former songwriting duo later buried the hatchet, but never formally worked together again. Lennon and Ono moved to the United States, but were constantly threatened with deportation by the Nixon administration. Lennon was told that he was being kicked out of the country due to his 1968 marijuana conviction in Britain, but the singer believed that he was being removed because of his activism against the unpopular Vietnam War. Documents later proved him correct. 2 years after Nixon resigned, Lennon was granted permanent United States residency. John Lennon's activism. John Lennon wasn't like most music stars, and this moment showed exactly why. While many would like their honeymoon to be a romantic moment, John Lennon's romance was his love for peace. Lennon and Yoko Ono's honeymoon was unlike any other. They used their time together to stage a bed-in for peace at the Amsterdam Hilton Hotel in March 1969, inviting the world's media to join them in their suite. The event was met with ridicule, but it didn't deter the couple from their mission to spread a message of peace. 3 months later, they staged another bed-in at the Queen Elizabeth Hotel in Montreal, where Lennon wrote and recorded the iconic song Give Peace a Chance. The song became an anti-war anthem, sung by 250,000 demonstrators against the Vietnam War in Washington, D.C. on November 15, 1969. Lennon and Ono continued their peace campaign by paying for billboards in 10 cities around the world, declaring, "War is over, if you want it," in the national language of each country. They also began to support the family of James Hanratty, who had been hanged in 1962 for a crime they believed he did not commit. Lennon was passionate about the case, seeing it as a symbol of the injustices perpetrated by those in power. He staged a Britain Murdered Hanratty banner march and a silent protest for the James Hanratty in London, and even produced a 40-minute documentary on the case. However, more than 30 years later, Hanratty's conviction was upheld after DNA evidence was found to match, validating the original verdict. Despite this, Lennon's efforts had brought attention to the case and highlighted the need for justice and peace. In 1971, John Lennon and Yoko Ono showed their support for the Clydeside UCS workers' work by sending a bouquet of red roses and a generous check for £5,000. When they heard about John Sinclair, a poet and activist serving 10 years in prison for selling marijuana, they knew they had to act. They joined forces with other musicians and activists, including Stevie Wonder and Bobby Seale, to organize the John Sinclair Freedom Rally in Ann Arbor, Michigan. The event drew 15,000 people and featured a performance by Lennon and Ono, who sang songs from their upcoming album, including John Sinclair, which called for his release. The rally was a success, and Sinclair was released on appeal bond just days later. Lennon's activism didn't stop there. When the Bloody Sunday incident occurred in Northern Ireland in 1972, he spoke out against the British Army's actions and expressed his support for the IRA. He and Ono wrote 2 protest songs, The Luck of the Irish and Sunday, Bloody Sunday, which appeared on their Sometime in New York City album. Although there were rumors that Lennon had given money to the IRA, Ono denied them. However, it's clear that Lennon and Ono were committed to supporting the Irish cause, and they even financially backed the production of a political documentary called The Irish Tapes. Years later, Lennon's cousin Stanley Parks revealed that the singer had indeed given money to the IRA during the 1970s. Lennon's activism had always been driven by his desire for peace and justice, and his support for the Irish cause was just one example of his commitment to fighting for what he believed in. But the most intriguing and heart-wrenching aspect of John Lennon's life is yet to come. John Lennon: love, controversy, wealth, and the legacy of a revolutionary spirit. John Lennon was not only one of the most influential musicians of the 20th century, he was also one of the most controversial and complex. Beyond the spotlight of Beatlemania and the peace signs, Lennon's personal life was a whirlwind of intense relationships, turbulent emotions, and bold statements that continue to spark debate to this day. Lennon's love life was never simple. His first marriage was to Cynthia Powell, whom he met at the Liverpool College of Art. Cynthia was quiet and conservative, very unlike Lennon's bold personality, but the two fell in love. When she became pregnant, they married in 1960. Their son, Julian Lennon, was born soon after. But Lennon, caught in the rising fame of the Beatles and struggling with personal demons, was not the most attentive husband or father. The marriage quickly began to crack under the pressure of infidelity and emotional distance. In 1966, Lennon met Japanese avant-garde artist Yoko Ono at a London art gallery. Their connection was immediate and intense. By 1968, his marriage to Cynthia ended, and John and Yoko quickly became inseparable. Their union sparked outrage among Beatles fans and was widely blamed for contributing to the band's eventual breakup. John Lennon and Yoko's relationship became a performance in itself. They held bed-ins for peace, posed naked for the cover of their album Two Virgins, and spoke openly about their use, miscarriage, and deep, interdependent love. To the public, they were either romantic, radicals, or annoying provocateurs, but to each other, they were soulmates in rebellion. After years of personal turmoil and the birth of their son Sean in 1975, Lennon took a step back from the public eye. He became a stay-at-home dad, focusing on raising Sean. While Yoko managed their finances and art dealings, this quieter period was a significant shift. For Lennon, who had long struggled with the balance between fame and personal fulfillment, his relationships with both his sons were marked by regret and attempts at redemption. With Julian, there was distance and pain. Julian often spoke about feeling neglected. With Sean, Lennon seemed determined to do better, cooking for him and embracing a more nurturing role. Lennon has left behind a complicated legacy. He is celebrated as a champion of peace, yet his early years were marked by aggression and emotional volatility. He spoke of love, but admitted to jealousy and violence in past relationships. He preached unity, but often found himself isolated or in conflict with those closest to him. Yet, it is precisely this complexity that makes him enduring. Lennon was not perfect. He was painfully human. He evolved over time, acknowledged his flaws, and tried to do better. His music, activism, and radical honesty created ripples that are still felt around the world. The immortal John Lennon. One of the most iconic images in music history was captured by Annie Leibovitz on the day of John Lennon's tragic death. The photograph, which featured a naked Lennon embracing his wife Yoko Ono, was taken just hours before his death and was later chosen as the cover of Rolling Stone's January 22, 1981 issue. This special edition of the magazine was dedicated to commemorating Lennon's life and legacy, with a collection of heartfelt articles, letters, and photographs that celebrated his impact on music and the world. The image has become an enduring symbol of Lennon's love and artistry, and its significance has only grown with time. In 2005, the American Society of Magazine Editors recognized its power and influence, ranking it as the top magazine cover of the last 40 years. December 8th is a day of remembrance for John Lennon, marked by a poignant ceremony. Outside the iconic Capitol Records building in Hollywood, California, fans and loved ones gather to pay tribute to the legendary musician, lighting candles in front of his Hollywood Walk of Fame star. This heartfelt tradition is a testament to the enduring impact of Lennon's life and legacy. In 2007, the town of Durness in Scotland hosted the John Lennon Northern Lights Festival, a celebration of his life, music, and writings. The event was attended by Lennon's half-sister, Julia Baird, and his Scottish cousin, Stanley Parks, who shared intimate insights into his creative genius. Yoko Ono, Lennon's wife and artistic partner, continues to honor his memory with a simple, yet powerful gesture. Every December 8th, she places a lit candle in the window of Lennon's room in the Dakota, a beacon of light in the darkness. In Iceland, the Imagine Peace Tower shines bright from October 9th, Lennon's birthday, to mark December 8th, the anniversary of his tragic death. This symbolic tribute is a testament to the enduring power of Lennon's message of peace and love. In 1985, New York City honored John Lennon's memory by dedicating a serene area of Central Park, Strawberry Fields, directly across from the Dakota, where he had spent countless hours strolling. In a beautiful display of global unity, countries from around the world donated trees to the park, while the city of Naples, Italy, contributed the stunning Imagine mosaic centerpiece. Over 2 decades later, Yoko Ono unveiled the Imagine Peace Tower on the picturesque island of Vide, off the coast of Reykjavik, Iceland. This memorial projects a powerful beam of light into the sky every year between October 9th and December 8th, symbolizing Lennon's enduring message of peace. In 2009, the New York City Annex of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame hosted a special exhibit dedicated to Lennon's life and legacy. The exhibit featured a vast array of personal mementos, including the clothes he wore on the fateful night of his death, still wrapped in the brown paper bag from Roosevelt Hospital. Nearly a decade later, in 2018, Ono created a breathtaking artwork titled Sky, in Lennon's memory, as part of the MTA Arts and Design program. The installation was unveiled during the renovation of the 72nd Street subway station just outside the Dakota, serving as a permanent tribute to Lennon's boundless spirit and creative genius. Lennon's legacy extends far beyond his music, inspiring action and activism. In 2018, Paul McCartney participated in the March for Our Lives, a protest against gun violence, citing Lennon's incident as a motivating factor. As the world continues to grapple with the complexities of peace and violence, Lennon's memory serves as a reminder of the transformative power of love, artistry, and activism. In a world often fraught with division and turmoil, Lennon's message of peace and love remains as relevant as ever. His vision for a better world, articulated through his music and activism, serves as a guiding light, inspiring us to strive for a more harmonious and compassionate existence. Today, Lennon remains a symbol, not just of peace and imagination, but of transformation. From troubled young man to global icon, from angry youth to tender father, John Lennon's life was as layered and unpredictable as the man himself. And though he is gone, his message, music, and mystique live on. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. Also, check out another interesting video by clicking on the video shown on your screen. See you on the other side.